The sun filtered gently through the pine trees, casting long golden shafts across the kitchen floor. It was one of those perfect Idaho mornings, cool enough to make you reach for a sweater, warm enough to feel safe. Birds chirped. The smell of fresh coffee lingered. And in the quiet hum of that moment, Marissa Ewing stood by the window, watching her 16-year-old daughter, Adrienne, laughing as she leashed up their golden retriever, Buddy. Adrienne looked over her shoulder, her face lit with the same confidence and ease she'd had since childhood. "Be back in 20, she called. Marissa nodded, smiled, lifted her mug. "Stay on the trail." "I always do." The front door closed with a familiar click, and Marissa didn't know then, that sound would echo in her memory for the rest of her life. The screen door creaked shut. The house fell into stillness again. It was supposed to be just another Saturday. Adrienne had taken that same walking route for years. Down the Centennial Trail, past the creek, sometimes stopping at the library or grabbing a smoothie from the corner store. It was their tradition. She'd walk Buddy. Marissa would finish her coffee. Then they'd meet back in the kitchen for waffles. But by 9:15, there was no Adrienne. By 9:30, Marissa's coffee had gone cold. By 10 o'clock, she was on the trail herself, calling their names, voice growing thinner with every unanswered shout. No footprints. No leash. No Adrienne. No Buddy. At first, the police told her it was too soon to panic. Maybe Adrienne had met a friend, lost track of time. Teens do that. But Marissa knew. Mothers always do. By that evening, the trail was flooded with volunteers. Search dogs. Flyers with Adrienne's face were taped to every telephone pole in town. People knocked on doors. Drones were sent up. The forest echoed with her name, shouted again and again into the silence. But the silence never answered back. Days turned into weeks. Weeks bled into months. Seasons shifted. Search parties dwindled. And still, nothing. No shoes. No broken twigs. No Buddy. No Adrienne. The official explanation morphed. Maybe she ran away. Maybe she crossed paths with someone dangerous. Maybe it was the kind of thing people don't want to believe could happen in a quiet town like Lakeland. But Marissa never believed Adrienne ran. Her daughter was steady. Routine. There were college brochures on her desk. A packed SAT prep schedule. A planner marked down to the hour. And Buddy? Buddy never left Adrienne's side. If she'd run, Buddy would have come home. He knew the way. As the first winter approached, the calls from police became less frequent. No new leads, they'd say. We're doing everything we can. The missing posters yellowed and peeled. People stopped asking, any news? Because they already knew the answer. Marissa stopped going to the grocery store. The stares were unbearable. So were the apologies. By spring, the mailbox overflowed with unopened mail. She couldn't open the fridge without thinking of what Adrienne liked for lunch. Couldn't fold laundry without remembering how she used to borrow her sweaters. The days blurred. Some nights, Marissa slept in Adrienne's bed, clutching the empty pillow. She stopped dreaming. Stopped hoping. Stopped moving, except to breathe. Then, just after 6 a.m. on a cloudy July morning, the phone rang. A number she didn't recognize lit up the screen. Her heart stuttered. She almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. Mrs. Ewing, the voice on the other end said, low and cautious. "This is Detective Marcus Holbrook. We may have found something." Marissa sat up in bed. Her hand clutched the sheet, knuckles white. A hunter was using a drone over Coeur d'Alene National Forest, the detective continued. Thermal imaging picked up something unexpected. Marissa couldn't breathe. What did it find? There was a pause. A dog. Tied to a tree. Still alive. Looks like a golden retriever. The room spun. Time stopped. It had been 1 year. 1 whole year. And somehow, Buddy was still out there. Alive. Alone. Waiting. And whatever that meant, whatever had kept him alive for so long, it was only the beginning. The knock came just after dawn, a flat percussive rhythm that rattled the picture frames in Marissa's silent hallway. She froze halfway down the stairs, robe cinched tight, pulse hammering in her throat. Through the ripple of frosted glass she recognized Detective Marcus Holbrook, parka zipped to the chin, shoulders dusted with mist, eyes carrying a weight she'd come to dread. She opened the door without greeting. "Marissa," he said, voice lowered like someone breaking bad news to a child. "We found something." Cold air rushed in. She let him step across the threshold and followed him to the living room, where last year's Christmas lights still coiled in a grief-knotted pile. He set a tablet on the coffee table, tapped play, and a gray palette of thermal footage filled the screen, trees glowing white, earth black, a single flickering shape writhing near the center. "That's from a hunter's drone, 3 hours ago," he explained. The camera drifted closer, resolving a thin animal tethered to a pine trunk. Marissa leaned forward, breath held. The outline was unmistakable: broad head, plumed tail, that gentle slope of spine she'd scratched 1,000 times. "Buddy." Her chair scraped backward. "Is he alive?" "Barely." Holbrook paused the video on the moment the dog lifted its head, visible even in ghostly heat. "But yes. We've already airlifted him to the Northern Idaho Emergency Vet on Highway 95. Marissa's hand flew to her mouth. "Adrian, did the drone catch?" "Only the dog," Holbrook said softly. She reached for her keys. The squad car parted traffic like an ambulance, siren silent but light strobing crimson through the morning drizzle. Marissa sat in front, fingernails digging crescents into her palms. Holbrook spoke into the radio, words she barely heard: perimeter, evidence team, secure the area. The clinic appeared, a beige rectangle under buzzing sodium lamps. She was out the door before the engine stopped, pushing through glass into antiseptic brightness. A receptionist started to speak, recognized the story in Marissa's face, and simply pointed down a hall fragrant with disinfectant and fear. "Room 4. Stainless steel table. Fluorescent tubes humming overhead." Buddy lay on a thin blanket, foreline taped to a shaved foreleg, oxygen mask fogging gently. His coat, once sunshine bright, hung in dull ropes, ribs pressed against skin like unfinished thoughts. Yet his tail thumped weakly at her scent. "Hey, boy," she whispered, voice breaking as she stroked between his ears. "Warm. Real. Not a memory." A vet in scrubs approached. "I'm Dr. Chen. He's moderately dehydrated, underweight, but vitals are stable." Marissa nodded, eyes locked on the dog's. "How did he survive a year?" "That's the puzzle." Dr. Chen lifted a fresh photo collar bag. "Someone swapped his original tags for this plain nylon. No ID." She placed the new collar in Marissa's hands. It was cheap, blue, and spotless, as if changed recently. Something inside her twisted. Why keep him alive but hide who he is? Dr. Chen peeled back Buddy's fur at the neck. Angry welts circled the skin, red, raw, impossibly recent. "These rope burns are less than 48 hours old," she said. "Whoever tethered him did it yesterday." Marissa's stomach plunged. A year missing, yet the rope marks were fresh. So he wasn't out there this whole time? "Not unattended," Dr. Chen agreed. "We also pumped his stomach, kibble, high quality, ingested within 12 hours. She met Marissa's gaze. "Somebody's been feeding him regularly." Holbrook stepped closer, hands in coat pockets. Meaning Buddy was cared for, kept somewhere, then deliberately placed where a drone might spot him. Marissa pressed her forehead to Buddy's, memorizing his warmth. We need to find whoever owns that rope. Dr. Chen lifted a plastic evidence bag containing the frayed cord. Nylon braid, hardware store standard. But the knot was purposeful. Whoever tied it knew how to restrain without killing. Buddy's tail beat the blanket again, rhythm soft but determined, as though urging her not to give up. The detective's phone buzzed. He stepped aside, listened, then returned, expression tight. Search teams are en route to the drop site. I want you to stay here until we know more. Marissa shook her head. I'm going. Marissa. I watched her leave, she whispered, eyes flooding. I won't watch from a distance again. Holbrook studied her, then nodded once. 10 minutes. I'll have an officer escort you. Dr. Chen adjusted Buddy's fluids. He'll pull through. But these wounds. She traced the red rings. Someone kept him alive on purpose. The words fell like stones in a silent lake, ripples spreading through Marissa's mind, each circle another question, another horror. Someone had planned this. Fed the dog. Changed the collar. Tied him where he'd be found. A breadcrumb left exactly 1 year after Adrian vanished. Outside, sirens finally wailed as patrol cars converged on the forest. Marissa kissed Buddy's muzzle. Hold on. I'll be back. His eyes, clouded but trusting, followed her until the door shut. In the hallway, fluorescent light flickered overhead. Holbrook handed her a disposable coffee she didn't taste. As they walked, he spoke, I'll have forensics swab the collar for DNA. Vet is sending hair samples to the lab. We'll canvass feed suppliers for bulk purchases matching the kibble. Marissa's voice was barely a breath. This changes everything. It does. Holbrook pushed open the clinic's double doors. And whoever engineered it just made their first mistake. Police lights strobed across wet asphalt, reflecting in puddles like shattered rubies. Marissa climbed into the waiting cruiser. In the rearview mirror she caught her own reflection, eyes wide, face pale, fragments of fear and fury knotting together into resolve. The engine growled to life. Tires hissed over rain-slick pavement. Behind her, the clinic receded, Buddy's heartbeat echoing in memory. Marissa tightened her seatbelt, every sense braced. Somewhere among those trees, truth was finally stirring. And for the first time in 12 months, she felt the ground shift beneath fate's weight. She whispered, hold on. I'm coming, and no one will keep us apart again. The news spread faster than wildfire across the quiet neighborhoods of Lakeland. By noon, Adrienne's school principal had called, breathless with urgency, her voice trembling through the speakerphone. We just heard about Buddy, she said. Marissa, the whole community wants to help. We're organizing volunteers. Search parties. We won't waste a second. Within an hour, Marissa's modest 2-story house transformed into something out of a police drama. Folding tables appeared in her living room. Maps spilled across the kitchen island. Coffee brewed endlessly on the counter, the smell mixing with the anxiety in the air. Teachers, neighbors, former classmates, all showed up with boots, backpacks, walkie-talkies, and a shared sense of purpose. Cars lined both sides of the street. Windows fogged with breath and heat. It was like the town had been holding its breath for a year, and now, finally, they were exhaling. And then he arrived. Mr. Tobias Chandler. Adrienne's AP biology teacher. A man Marissa only vaguely remembered before the disappearance, polite, enthusiastic, and always offering extra help. But today, he didn't just arrive. He commanded. Unlike the others in jeans and sweatshirts, he wore top-of-the-line hiking gear. Moisture-wicking shirt. convertible pants. Tactical gloves clipped to his backpack. Everything looked freshly bought, as if he hadn't just prepared for a hike, but for this hike. He greeted the room with a calm, reassuring smile. "Mrs. Ewing," he said softly, eyes kind. "I can't tell you how devastated we all are. Adrian is an exceptional student." Marissa nodded politely. "She always spoke highly of your class." His face lit up with pride. "She was gifted. Dedicated. I remember how often she stayed after school for tutoring. Mondays and Wednesdays, I believe." Marissa blinked. "Tuesdays and Thursdays." He paused. Just for a fraction of a second. "Right," he corrected. "Sorry, it's been a while." That moment. That tiny hesitation. It sat wrong. Because Marissa remembered those nights. They were hospital shift nights. She'd leave dinner ready in the fridge. She never forgot them. But before she could press further, voices called out. The room swelled with motion. Coach Rodriguez, the high school football coach, stepped up with a laser pointer and started dividing the forest into grids. "We're assigning 6-person teams," he said. "Each group gets a radio, first aid, and a designated search pattern." Chandler stepped forward, laying out a highly detailed topographic map he'd printed himself, elevation lines, old service roads, landmarks color-coded. It was impressive. Too impressive. "I've done some research overnight," he explained. "The eastern quadrant has dense brush and multiple ravines. It's dangerous but thorough. I'd like to lead Team C." "Appreciate the initiative," Coach said. "You sure you're up for that terrain?" "I'm confident," Chandler replied. "And I've brought emergency supplies, flares, purification tablets, GPS units. We'll be safe." Marissa couldn't help watching him more closely now. She noticed how he placed himself beside the maps. How he subtly redirected attention. How every sentence seemed rehearsed. "I want to help," Marissa said, moving toward the table. Chandler looked up sharply. "Of course. Team A is going north, logging roads and well-traveled paths. Easier terrain. That's probably the best fit." "Why not the east?" she asked. That he gave a gentle smile. "We wouldn't want you injured, Mrs. Ewing. Adrian needs you strong, not lost in a ravine." Coach nodded. "He's right. Stick to Team A." Marissa glanced at Chandler's hands as he handed out gear. They weren't shaking. They were steady. Too steady. And then came the moment that froze her in place. Chandler's phone buzzed on the table beside him. He moved to pick it up casually, but Marissa's eyes caught the screen. A single preview text lit up before he tapped it away. "Stick to the plan." He saw her looking. Smiled. "Just a teacher checking in," he said. Lots of moving parts. But something in his tone had shifted. Slightly higher. Tighter. She didn't respond. Just nodded. Around them, volunteers strapped on radios and backpacks. People paired up and loaded into cars. But for Marissa, the room had changed. Because something didn't feel right. The maps. The mistake about tutoring days. The gear. That text. A year ago, she would have brushed it off. But not today. Not when her daughter might still be out there. Not when a man with tactical boots and a perfect memory made a single, telling slip. And now, her instincts were awake. Fully. She watched Chandler walk outside, his hand brushing her shoulder as he passed. "We'll find her," he said gently. "I promise." She nodded again. But in her chest, something stirred. A voice she hadn't listened to in far too long. Doubt. The house had emptied again. The maps were gone. The coffee had gone cold. Volunteers had loaded into their cars and fanned out into the Idaho wilderness, voices on radios echoing with hope and urgency. But inside the Ewing home, it was quiet. Too quiet. Marissa stood at the edge of Adrienne's bedroom. The door creaked softly as she pushed it open. Everything inside remained untouched, like a museum exhibit frozen in time. A purple comforter neatly tucked. Polaroids on the corkboard. Hair ties curled around a lamp base. She stepped in, each footfall landing like an apology. This was where Adrienne had studied. Slept. Dreamed. It had been a year. A full year. Yet it still smelled faintly like her shampoo. Like lavender and lemon. Marissa moved to the desk. Slowly. Her fingers ran along the edge before she reached for the drawer she hadn't dared open in months. The one Adrienne used for schoolwork. Inside lay the planner. Thick. Spiral-bound. Pink with gold letters spelling out, "Make it happen." Marissa opened it. Pages fluttered like the wings of a trapped bird. Each one neatly filled with color-coded ink. Adrienne's handwriting, clean, organized, confident. And there, on the September page, was the first red flag. Science help, Mr. C. 3:30, room 214. But the date? Monday. She flipped forward. 2 weeks later, Wed, Mr. C, lab work. October, Friday reschedule, Mr. C has meeting. No pattern. No consistency. Not Tuesdays and Thursdays like Mr. Chandler had confidently said earlier. These were scattered. Sporadic. Almost like they'd been hidden. Her breath caught. She turned the pages more carefully now, eyes narrowing at the margins. Adrienne had written more than just schedules. She'd left notes. Little confessions in purple ink, the color she always used for private thoughts. Mr. C says I'm special. Different from other students. Earned my A today. Mr. C so proud. The words felt wrong. Marissa flipped further. Lunch, science prep room. Organizing supplies. 12 to 12:50. Lunch at Lakeland High was only 30 minutes. How was Adrienne writing 50-minute meetings during school hours? Another entry, late to English, Mr. C wrote me a pass. Marissa's hands began to shake. She found progress reports tucked into the back pocket. Biology, AB in September. By October, after the private sessions began, it jumped to an A. By November, perfect scores. But it wasn't the grades that chilled her. It was the tone. The trust. The way Adrienne wrote about Mr. Chandler like he was more than a teacher. Like he was a gatekeeper to her future. Then she found it. Mr. C gave me the pink bracelet today. Said not to show Mom. Other kids might be jealous. Our special secret. Marissa's chest tightened. She had never seen a pink bracelet. Adrienne never wore one around the house. Never mentioned it. She turned to December. Mr. C let me use his laptop for lunch research. He trusts me. Found our secret study spot. Only for his best students. Had to promise not to tell anyone. Not even Jess. Jess. Adrienne's best friend. They told each other everything. Or. Marissa thought they did. She turned to the December 15th page. Her throat closed. The entire note section was filled. Adrienne's neat handwriting poured out across the page. Mr. C explained why our tutoring is different. Says my potential needs special nurturing. Away from the mediocre masses. Says I'm lucky to have him. That traditional school would slow me down. Says our connection is rare. That others wouldn't understand. Marissa's knees buckled. She sank onto the edge of the bed, planner clutched to her chest. It wasn't just extra help. It was grooming. Adrian didn't know it. Maybe she still didn't. But Chandler, he knew. He'd built something. Carefully. Patiently. Using Adrienne's dreams as bait. Her need for approval. Her hunger to make her mom proud. Marissa sat there for a long time, the pages open on her lap. The room felt darker. The lavender scent more artificial now. Then, car doors slammed outside. She moved to the window. Volunteers were loading gear. One team headed toward the east quadrant. And at the far end of the driveway, Chandler. He was calm. Composed. Moving with purpose as he loaded his gear into a silver Honda. She remembered the map he'd shown. How prepared he'd been. How quick he was to redirect her from that quadrant. Marissa stepped back from the window, heart racing. Something was wrong. She grabbed the planner, stuffed it into her coat, and made her way downstairs. Team A was already assembling. Someone called out, "Mrs. Ewing, you're with us." She waved. "Be right there." But instead of walking toward the group, she slipped behind her car. Quietly. She watched Chandler. He climbed into his Honda, checked his mirrors. Then he pulled out of the driveway. Not northeast. Not toward the forest. He turned south. Away from the search grid. Away from where he said he'd be. Marissa got in her own car. Hands trembling. Engine humming. Eyes locked on that silver Honda in the distance. He was driving away from the rescue teams. And she was going to follow him. Marissa kept two cars between her and the silver Honda, her palms slick on the steering wheel, heart pounding against her ribs. He should have gone northeast, toward the forest, toward the search grid he insisted on leading. Instead, Mr. Chandler had turned south. Quiet roads. No traffic. No radio chatter. Just the sound of tires over wet pavement and a sense that something very, very wrong was unfolding. She didn't know what she was hoping to find. But deep down, part of her already knew. 3 miles down Highway 95, his car turned into a small gas station. Marissa didn't stop. She drove past, pulled into a nearby McDonald's lot, and waited. Through her side mirror, she watched him get out, scan the lot, check his phone. His posture was tense now. Not the calm, controlled teacher from her kitchen. 5 minutes later, he was back on the road. She followed, keeping her distance. He drove 2 more miles before pulling into what looked like an abandoned fruit stand. Again, he didn't get out. Just sat there, still and silent. Watching. Waiting. Then, without warning, he turned onto Rimrock Road, a winding 2-lane highway that led toward the edge of town and into the foothills. Marissa followed, hands trembling. The houses grew older, more spaced out, swallowed by trees. And then she saw it. He was pulling into a gravel driveway half hidden by overgrown rhododendrons. She didn't slow. Just drove past and caught a glimpse of the house. It was old. Craftsman style. Set far back from the road, half obscured by tall grass and pine. The paint was fresh. The yard trimmed. But the mailbox was stuffed with old newspapers, like someone was keeping up appearances, but not really living there. She kept driving for another quarter mile, then parked behind an abandoned barn hidden by trees. The second she stepped out, the forest swallowed the sound of her footsteps. She made her way back toward the house, crouching low behind thick brush. The closer she got, the more details came into focus: a detached garage, tire tracks in the gravel, some recent, some faint. There was movement in a basement window. But it wasn't like the others. Most had been replaced with glass blocks, thick and distorted. Except one. A small ventilation window, just a foot off the ground. She crept forward until her knees pressed into the damp earth. There, behind a narrow gap in the curtain, was something she never expected to see. A desk. A whiteboard filled with notes on cell respiration. Stacks of textbooks. A fridge in the corner. A microwave. And hanging from the back of a chair, Adrienne's purple backpack. The one with the stitched-on smiley face. The one she'd carried that morning she disappeared. Marissa's breath caught in her throat. She pressed closer to the glass, blocking out the reflection. The stone walls, the setup, it looked like a classroom. A prison made to look like school. Suddenly, movement. Mr. Chandler walked into view, descending what had to be stairs just outside the window's frame. He was holding a tray, a sandwich, a glass of milk, an apple sliced into neat wedges. He spoke. His voice was muffled but clear enough through the glass. "I brought lunch. Turkey and Swiss. Your favorite." Then, another voice. Softer. Younger. Faint. Marissa's chest constricted. It was Adrienne. She couldn't make out the words. But the tone wasn't panicked. It was familiar. Worn. Chandler leaned closer to the unseen speaker. "Your mother still hasn't figured it out," he said gently. "But we need to be more careful. They found the dog. That changes things." There was another murmur. "I know you miss him," Chandler said. "But it was necessary. He would have led them here. You understand, right? Everything I do, is to protect you." Marissa clamped a hand over her mouth, tears stinging her eyes. She was here. Adrienne was here. Alive. Speaking. Breathing. Trapped. And the man who'd promised to lead a search team was standing in a soundproofed basement, feeding her lunch and speaking like they were partners in some twisted plan. Adrienne's voice came again, clearer this time. "Mom won't, the assignments." "You don't have to worry about that," Chandler interrupted. "She'll understand, eventually. When you graduate with honors, when you get into medical school. She'll see what I've built. What we've built." Marissa backed away from the window, breath shallow, fingers frozen. This wasn't a hunch anymore. This was real. She had seen the backpack. Heard her daughter's voice. Heard him. Adrienne wasn't missing. She was caged. And now, she had to do something about it. Marissa's fingers trembled as she backed away from the tiny basement window. Her knees were soaked with dirt, her lungs tight with panic. She ducked low behind the HVAC unit, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. Her thumb hovered over the screen. This was it. The moment that would either save Adrienne, or destroy everything. She dialed 911. The ring felt like it lasted an eternity. 911, what's your emergency? She whispered, barely louder than breath. My name is Marissa Ewing. My daughter Adrienne, she's been missing for a year. I found her. She's alive. She's in the basement of a house. House number 4847 Rimrock Road, please, send help, now. But then, her foot shifted. A crunch. The brittle sound of plastic shattering under her heel. She looked down, a broken solar light, its glass cracked like ice. The back door of the house slammed open behind her. Marissa. Chandler's voice roared through the clearing. I know you're there. She ran. Leaves tore at her arms. Her boots pounded across the forest floor as tree branches whipped past her face. Behind her, Chandler was screaming, crashing through the brush. You couldn't just trust me. I was going to fix this. She didn't look back. Couldn't. Her lungs burned. Her heart threatened to burst. The woods were closing in. She didn't care. She just needed to make it to the barn. To the Camry. Somehow, impossibly, her car came into view through the trees, like a beacon of escape. 50 feet. 30. 10. She flung herself at the door and slammed it shut, locking all 4 doors in one frantic motion. A second later, Chandler was there, fists pounding against the glass, eyes wide, wild. "She wants to be here," he screamed. "You're ruining everything." Marissa shoved the key into the ignition, tires screeching as she reversed out of the clearing, gravel flying behind her. Through the rearview mirror, she saw him sprinting back toward his Honda. She didn't wait. Didn't breathe. She floored it. Back onto Rimrock. Wind tearing through her open window, hair in her face. Her hands were shaking so violently she could barely hold the wheel. Behind her, a silver Honda merged onto the road. He was chasing her. She didn't know where she was going. Just away. She raced through intersections, past stop signs, weaving through sleepy neighborhoods, praying no child would run out into the street. She clipped a garbage bin. Barely missed a parked truck. She could see the headlights behind her growing closer. Closer. She turned hard onto Cedar Lane. Tires screeched. Another turn onto Maple. Then Pine. He followed every move. Like he knew the roads as well as she did. Then, Salvation. The Walmart on the edge of town. Marissa cut across the parking lot and pulled into the farthest corner, between 2 delivery trucks. She killed the lights. Turned off the engine. Her chest heaved. Her throat burned. She was hidden. She was alive. But her phone was gone. Shattered back at the house. All she could do now was wait. She pressed her back to the seat, heart thudding like a drum inside a coffin. Every headlight that passed sent fear lancing through her. Every second dragged like an hour. And then, she remembered. She had said the address. Twice. She spelled it. 4847 Rimrock Road. It had to be enough. Please God, let it be enough. Meanwhile, miles away, Officer James Wright of the Kootenai County Sheriff's Department was already en route. A dispatcher named Bethany had flagged the call. Poor signal. Caller disconnected. But she got the address. And that was enough. 3 units pulled up to the house just after Marissa disappeared into the parking lot. The front yard was quiet. The door was open. The house looked normal. Too normal. They were preparing to force entry when the silver Honda appeared again, headlights washing over the gravel driveway. It was Chandler. He saw the cruisers too late. Tried to back up. But Wright's SUV boxed him in. Guns drawn. Shouts. Commands. Out of the vehicle. Hands where we can see them. Chandler didn't fight. Didn't run. He stepped out slowly. His shirt was soaked with sweat. His eyes unfocused. "You don't understand," he said, as they cuffed him. "She needs me. I'm the only one who understands what she's capable of." He smiled. Almost proudly. She's going to change the world. But no one was listening. The house on Rimrock was no longer just a quiet country home. It was a crime scene. And inside it, locked beneath stone, behind a hidden wall, was the truth they'd all been missing. Officers moved through the house in coordinated silence, guns drawn, boots quiet against the polished wood floors. The main level was clean, minimal, like someone had prepared it to be judged. No photos. No signs of life. Just order. But Detective Holbrook knew what they were really looking for was below. In the hallway, Deputy Sarah Martinez paused near a water heater closet. Something felt off. The tank itself was pushed forward, not fully flush with the wall. She reached out and pressed against the painted drywall behind it. It gave. She called out, "Got something here." Behind the heater was a concealed doorway, skillfully cut and painted to blend into the surroundings. They pulled it open slowly. It revealed a narrow hallway lined with stone and concrete. No lights, no windows. Just a single steel door at the end, secured with a deadbolt, locked from the outside. Holbrook stepped forward and raised his voice. "Adrian? This is the police. You're safe. We're coming in." He turned the key. The deadbolt clicked. The door opened. And what they saw inside made every stomach in the room turn. It wasn't a dungeon, not in the way they'd imagined. It wasn't chains and darkness. It was school. A warped, twisted version of it. The room had been a root cellar once, judging by the thick stone walls and low ceiling. But it had been transformed. There was a bed, a small fridge, a microwave. A whiteboard covered in notes about cellular respiration and protein synthesis. Textbooks neatly stacked on shelves. A single desk sat in the center of the room. And at that desk was Adrian Ewing. She was impossibly thin. Pale. Dressed in loose, clean clothes that hung off her frame like they didn't quite belong to her. Her hair was long, unkempt, pulled back with a pink scrunchie that looked too new. Her eyes were locked on a notebook. Her pencil moved furiously. Holbrook stepped forward, heart pounding. "Adrian?" She looked up. Her face was blank at first, as if her mind took time to catch up to what she was seeing. Then, confusion. Not relief. "I'm working," she said softly. "I have to finish this. Mr. C said I need perfect scores." "Adrian, you don't have to finish anything," Holbrook said. "You're safe now. We're taking you home." But she didn't move. She clutched the notebook like a lifeline. Her eyes darted to the whiteboard. "The mitosis quiz is tomorrow. I still have 3 chapters to read." Deputy Martinez's voice cracked. "Sweetheart, there's no test. You don't have to do this anymore." Adrian blinked, slowly. "But if I fall behind, I won't get into UW. Mr. C said I need a perfect GPA. He said Mom would be proud." Holbrook crouched beside her. "Your mom is proud. She's been looking for you every single day." Adrian's grip tightened on the notebook. "Where's Mr. C?" she whispered. "He's gone," Holbrook said. "We're here to help you." For a long moment, she didn't speak. Her pencil hovered over the page, the words frozen halfway. Then, her voice broke. "You won't lose these, right?" She held up the notebook with trembling hands. "All my work, it's all in here. Every essay. Every assignment. I earned them." "We've got them," Holbrook said gently. "We'll make sure they're safe." Adrian finally stood. Slowly. Her knees buckled, but Martinez caught her. As they helped her toward the door, she looked back one last time, at the whiteboard, the schedule taped to the wall, the pile of textbooks stacked like monuments to a year she'd never get back. She turned to Holbrook. "I didn't think I was missing," she said quietly. "I thought I was just getting ahead." Then she clutched the notebook to her chest and walked into the light. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, washing everything in sterile white. The beeping of monitors and the shuffle of nurses filled the space like background noise in a world that felt too bright, too loud, too fast. Adrian sat on the edge of the hospital bed, arms wrapped tightly around her chest. She wore a gown 2 sizes too big, her thin frame swallowed by its folds. Her hair hung in loose, tangled strands. But her hands never stopped moving. One clenched and unclenched. The other gripped a pencil and scratched notes across a lined notepad the nurses had given her, as if it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the ground. She kept asking the same questions. Can I get my textbooks? Did they bring my binder? Can someone test me on AP Calc? A nurse tried to take her vitals. Adrian flinched and asked if it could wait until after her biology review session. There was no session. But to her, there had to be. Because that's what kept her alive. In the psych evaluation room 3 floors down, Detective Holbrook sat across from Tobias Chandler. His shirt was wrinkled, his hands still cuffed, but his eyes, calm. Composed. Like none of this. The raid, the arrest, the collapse of the lie he'd built, fazed him. I want to explain, he said. But only if someone will actually listen. Holbrook didn't blink. Go ahead. I saw Adrian the day she walked into my classroom 3 years ago, Chandler began, his voice soft. She wasn't like the others. They stared at phones. She stared at me. She wanted to learn. And that justified kidnapping her? She was drowning, Chandler said. Divorced parents. Pressure from everywhere. B's in science. She thought she was failing. But I saw something in her. Potential. Holbrook stared at him, jaw tight. I didn't take her, Chandler continued, I saved her. School was noise. I gave her silence. Focus. Purpose. By locking her in a basement. I gave her a future, Chandler said. We had a curriculum. Structure. I taught her more in 1 year than that school ever could. He said it with pride. Like he expected praise. Everything I did, he whispered, was for her own good. Back in the hospital, Marissa watched her daughter through the glass. A trauma specialist, Dr. Morrison, stood beside her. She's not afraid of him, the doctor said softly. She's afraid of what her life means without him. That's how deep the programming runs. Marissa's hands were clenched at her sides. She didn't survive by waiting to be rescued, Dr. Morrison added. She survived by believing he was the one helping her. Inside the room, Adrian was still writing. Still studying. Still trying. Trying to earn something. Trying to win back a future she believed she'd already ruined. Marissa stepped in quietly. Adrian looked up. Her eyes were tired. Hollow. But there was a flicker of something, recognition, maybe. Uncertainty. Fear. Hi, sweetheart, Marissa said, keeping her voice calm. I'm behind, Adrian said quickly. I lost a whole year. Mr. C said I could take a gap year, but I don't think colleges will accept it unless I show independent study. I was working so hard, Mom. You were doing your best, Marissa said, moving closer. I had a system. I studied every day. I kept everything. My scores were perfect. He said I was ready. Adrienne's voice cracked. I just need my assignments. Please. My transcripts. I can explain it. I can write a letter. I can still, her voice dropped to a whisper, I can still get in. Marissa knelt beside her and reached for her daughter's hand. Adrian, she said gently, you don't have to prove anything. Not to me. Not to anyone. Adrienne's chin quivered. Her eyes searched Marissa's face. Then came the question. So quiet, it nearly broke the air. Will I still get into college? Marissa's heart shattered. She couldn't speak. Because right now, what Adrian needed wasn't a plan. It was permission to stop surviving. And start healing. The winter sun slanted through the hospital window, its pale light drifting across a vase of daisies someone from town had left that morning. Marissa sat beside Adrienne's bed, fingers loosely woven with her daughter's. There were no textbooks here, no whiteboards, just the quiet beep of a monitor and the hush of nurses walking past the door. Adrienne's pencil lay untouched on the tray. She watched the ceiling, lost in thought, her eyes still shadowed by months of fluorescent confinement. Marissa squeezed her hand. "You don't have to earn my love," she said, voice barely louder than a breath. "It isn't something you get for A+s. You had it the moment I first held you." Adrienne blinked, like she was coming up from deep water. "Mr. C said people only pay attention if you're perfect." "He lied," Marissa replied. "Perfection was never the price." Footsteps approached. Principal Morrison peeked in, holding a stack of envelopes and cards. "Half the senior class wrote letters," she whispered. "No pressure to read them now, just proof you were never forgotten." She set them on the windowsill and stepped out. Adrienne stared at the stack, chewing her lip. "They think I'm brave," she murmured. "They don't know I was too scared to leave." Marissa brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Brave isn't never being afraid. It's being here, healing, even when you're terrified." Downstairs, reporters crowded the lobby, cameras jockeying for space. Detective Holbrook held a press conference, announcing multiple felony charges against Tobias Chandler: kidnapping, child endangerment, false imprisonment. Behind the podium, he kept his answers clipped, eyes hard. When asked if Chandler had shown remorse, he said only, he believes his fantasy. That's not remorse. Back in Adrienne's room, Dr. Morrison arrived for the afternoon session. She set 2 chairs facing each other, no desk between them, nothing that looked like a test. "We're going to practice sitting with silence today," she explained. "No assignments, no goals. Just being." Adrienne's foot tapped, restless. Silence felt like wasted time. Dr. Morrison waited, patient as stone. Minutes passed. Adrienne's shoulders lowered a fraction. Her gaze drifted to the window where snow began to fall, slow, deliberate flakes spiraling against a gray sky. "I forgot what real weather looked like," she whispered. "Down there it was always fluorescent." Marissa's throat tightened. "Whatever storms come, we'll face them together," she said. A week later, Marissa guided Adrienne through the front door of their house. Paper snowflakes made by neighborhood kids hung in every window. The living room map tables were gone, replaced by casseroles, fresh blankets, and a hand-knitted scarf draped over the couch. A banner stretched across the archway, "Welcome home, Adrienne. We missed you." Adrienne stopped beneath it, eyes glossy with disbelief. "They did all this?" "They needed to help," Marissa said. "Now they know how." From the kitchen came a familiar bark. Buddy, wearing a soft neck bandage, trotted out, tail whirring like a metronome gone wild. For a heartbeat Adrienne froze, memories colliding, rope burns, forest cold, then she knelt, burying her face in golden fur. Buddy whined, pressing close until her trembling eased. Marissa exhaled the breath she'd held for a year. Later that day, the doorbell rang. Coach Rodriguez stood on the porch with a stack of football program hoodies. "Team voted to replace our sponsor logo," he said, offering one to Adrienne. Across the front, bold white letters read, "Her name, her strength. Whenever you're ready, practices are open. No grades required." Adrienne traced the letters like they were braille. "Thank you," she whispered. That night she lay in her own bed, the purple comforter still neatly tucked. The ceiling held the faint glow of plastic stars they'd stuck up years ago. Marissa sat beside her until Adrienne's breathing slowed into sleep. Then she slipped downstairs, every creak of the staircase a reminder that silence no longer meant danger. She opened the planner, the one filled with Mr. Chandler's handwriting and false promises. Page after page of rigid schedules, star stickers for perfect tests, notes about being special, different, chosen. She closed it, slid it into a box marked evidence, and taped it shut. In its place she set a fresh spiral notebook and a handful of colored pens on Adrienne's desk. No assignments. Just blank pages. January thaw melted snow into rivulets that traced along curb edges. Outside the courthouse, townsfolk gathered, breath turning to fog as Chandler was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, wrists in cuffs. Cameras flashed. He kept his chin high, eyes distant, the fantasy still held him tight. Inside, the prosecution laid out meticulous evidence, GPS logs, the timetable on each lesson, the rope, the notes scrawled in his own precise script awarding bonus credit for obedience. Chandler listened, expression almost curious, as though grading a presentation. When court recessed, Marissa declined every microphone. She had nothing to say to cameras, every word she had belonged to her daughter now. Back home, Adrienne sat at the dining room table, Buddy's head in her lap. She opened the blank notebook, turned to the first page, and stared at it a long time. Her pencil hovered. Then she began, not in bullet points or color-coded lines, but slow, unsure strokes. Marissa watched from the doorway, silent. Adrienne wrote a date, paused, then another line. She stopped to pet Buddy's ears, as if gathering courage. Finally, she wrote 9 words. She read them once, twice, then smiled, small, real. She set the pencil down and closed the notebook. Marissa crossed the room, heart beating steady. "May I see?" Adrienne nodded. Marissa opened to the page. "Today I studied, myself." Tears blurred the letters. Marissa closed the notebook, pressed it to her chest, and pulled Adrienne into her arms. Buddy nosed between them, tail thumping the hardwood. Outside, the town breathed a collective sigh. The banner still fluttered in the window. And inside, for the first time in a very long year, the Ewing home felt full, of sound, of hope, of pages waiting to be written without fear of a grade at the top.